Chris, you ready?
So you weren't ready for me.
Yes, we're ready. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for, it's Tuesday, the 25th, 2021. It's on?
Yes.
Got it? Okay. At this time, I'd like to welcome everyone at 6 o'clock. And with that being said,
Madam Chairman,
yes, sir, Mr. Meek.
I make a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel matters, architect selection for the new elementary school at the former J.L. Mann site, a property quit claim at Summit Drive Elementary to the city of Greenville, and the amendment of the Malden Centerpoint intergovernmental agreement, and to receive advice on legal matters, including RO versus School District of Greenville County.
All in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
I need a second. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. All in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
What? Yeah. We have come out of executive session without any action taken. Therefore, it's approximately 6:35, and we are done with executive session. We will move forward, and I will expect everybody in their seats at 7 o'clock. Thank you. Good evening. It's Tuesday, May 25th, 2021. Our board meeting tonight is 7 o'clock. At this time, I welcome all of you. I will ask Mr. Lewis if he will be so kind as to give the prayer, and then Ms. Goodwin Caldwell will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and for the time that we have to spend together. And thank you for being with us and blessing us and our students and our staff through this incredibly challenging year. And please be with us, continue to bless us over the summer and help us to continue to make good decisions in your name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone would be seated. At this time, I would entertain a motion to accept the consent calendar.
Make a motion to accept.
Motion was made by Mr. Suddeth and second by Mr. Meek. Any questions? All in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the motion carries. At this time, we have the appearance of the visitors, and they will come in accordingly. The first visitor is Sarah Maddox.
When you're ready, Mr. Lewis right here will keep time for you on the stage.
Mr. Lewis is in the pink kind of salmon shirt, and he will be timing you 3 minutes. And at this time, Ms. Maddox, whenever you're ready.
Okay, my name is Sarah Maddox. I have 4 children in Greenville County schools, ranging from elementary to high school. Last spring, we were in such an unprecedented time. The cautious nature of decisions made concerning COVID protocol was understandable. But in light of all we have learned and progress we have made, a return to normalcy is now within reach. A reevaluation of the protocol is vital for the coming school year. The school board is an elected body whose job is to represent the community. Decisions regarding next year's COVID guidelines should be made by the board with input from the community. I would like to touch briefly on social distancing as well as the use of plexiglass barriers. In studies being conducted, there is concerning proof emerging that social distancing is disrupting children's social and emotional development. To what degree remains unknown. It is clear, though, that these effects are negative. Also, it seems that having a child's head pinned inside a 3-sided plexiglass box is not conducive for learning. Also, the CDC has even stated that barriers are ineffective against airborne viruses such as COVID-19, which raises the question yet again, are these protocols truly necessary They were only ever recommendations, not mandates. Teachers and staff have finally had the opportunity to receive the COVID vaccinations. It's been proven that these were very effective. Between that news and the fortunate fact that children are rarely susceptible to severe COVID, a mask-free option was made available. The immediate yet uncalled for drawback to this great news was a steady stream of bullying, primarily coming from teachers. We know Greenville County Schools has a zero tolerance for policy for bullying. Therefore, if a student is being ostracized, treated unfairly or unequally by a teacher, that teacher should be reprimanded immediately. In conclusion, I, amongst a growing number of people in the community, believe these innocent children have spent long enough carrying the burdens of this unexpected virus. They have been wrongfully conditioned to living in a state of irrational fear. They are also absorbing the anxiety of the adults around them. This will continue to have a negative effect on their mental health unless changes are made in time for the coming school year. Adults have had the time to make personal and professional changes if they feel unsafe. At this point in time, the Board of Trustees should be consulted with and given a vote on all future protocols related to COVID so that the community has a voice. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Ms. Maddox.
Thank you.
Just say your name and we'll up here on stage.
Whenever you're ready.
Thank you.
Yes.
My name is Dan Wallen. 10 years ago, my wife and I thought we had moved to one of South Carolina's best districts and our children would be attending a great school in Oakview Elementary. We have since been red-pilled and our eyes open to the imprudence that is Greenville County Schools and their harmful impact on our children. Superintendent Royster behaves like a dictator where he makes the decisions and he knows best. I say no. Parents know what is best for their children, and they are the ones who should be making the choices. Greenville County's own website for Royster's bio states, and I quote, "The belief that all decisions should be based on what is best for students," end quote. So I ask, were the repeated nosebleeds my daughter endured during her
Mr.
masking
Wallen,
the best for her?
Mr. Wallen, I'm going to interrupt you and ask you if you could make this a more professional and not an attack on the superintendent, please.
I'm sorry, I thought what I said thus far was professional.
I had a couple of board members that felt that it was coming across a little too strong. So if you will continue and Mr. Lewis will continue what you said.
Do I get the remainder of my time?
Of course you do.
Great, thank you.
You have 2 minutes and 10 seconds.
So I ask, were the repeated nosebleeds my daughter endured during the masking the best for her? How about the headaches and dizzy spells? What about the soaked mask every time my daughter stepped off the bus? Were those the best things for my beautiful girls? How many other Greenville County students came home with blood on their masks? One day, my daughter had a difficult time breathing at school and pulled the mask below her nose for a minute. She was quickly put on a list and got a visit from Principal Revis, who promptly threatened her with suspension. Under these administrators, the mental health of students across Greenville County is in rapid decline. How many of our precious children will have lasting psychological damage from the masks, distancing, and continued plexiglass isolation? There was never scientific data suggesting COVID-19 was a significant risk to our children or that children passing it to adults was a relevant threat. Student academic health, also under this administration, were equally disastrous. The number of Greenville County students having an F on their report card in the fall of 2019 was roughly 5,300. By fall of 2020, that number had more than tripled to 16,047. How many parents out there got letters saying their child may fail or that summer school with even more masking was recommended? Shame on the board who recommended that these policies be continued. Next year, we have very little guidance and leadership in terms of where these policies will be. Why is that? Kids need normal and parents need choice. It is time that parents who have children here in the schools take control of this board and its policies. May God bless our children.
We're ready.
Catherine, Derek is, Mr. Lewis is up on the dais, and whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'm Catherine Schumacher. I'm President and CEO of Public Education Partners. And equally as important, I'm the mother of a 7th grader and 9th grader in Greenville County Schools. And I want to start by saying, as both a community partner and as a parent, I want to express my gratitude to the trustees, district leadership, and every single teacher and staff member of Greenville County Schools. The countless hours, sleepless nights, and lost weekends and holidays are not lost on many of us. Providing leadership in a complex and rapidly evolving environment is incredibly difficult. So thank you for sticking it out and for bringing your heart for children and the people that serve them into this room. And second, I want to offer some words of encouragement. At PEP, we've been examining the words we use when discussing the impact of the pandemic on learning. And those words are almost all negative: learning loss, remediation, COVID slide. And we ask how quickly we can get back to the normal and the way it was before, perhaps without thinking that normal and the way it was before didn't serve all of our children as well as they deserve. And so I would like to ask our community to focus, and all of you, to focus not on what we feel we have lost, but rather what we stand to gain in this moment. How can we leverage the once-in-a-generation investment of resources in public education from pandemic relief to make a difference for today's Greenville County School students and those who will walk into classrooms in the years to come? Not just in terms of academic supports for students like tutoring and interventionists, but also in school climate and culture investments like social emotional learning, mental health supports, mentoring, and diversity, equity, and inclusion training. These investments will equip educators with everything they need to pour their best selves into students. Over the last year, our children have seen that sometimes you have to adapt and try different things and be uncomfortable and do the best you can, even though it isn't the best you'd like. And that's a really important lesson. And even in the midst of all that, kids have learned and grown. I was talking with a 1st grade teacher this weekend, actually, about celebrating the positive rather than lamenting the negative. And she said that her students do that for her every single day. And one of her students reached a new benchmark for reading last week, even after all the challenges of the school year. "I'm a reader," she exclaimed proudly, over and over. "I'm a reader, I'm a reader." So there is work to be done, no doubt, but I hope that you all will also take a moment to celebrate the success that students like this little girl experienced this year. These successes, though carved out of great difficulty, remind us why we're all here tonight. PEP and so many other community partners remain steadfast in our support of the district, its employees, and all of its students. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Schumacher. Thank you. I'd like to, because Catherine just said we need to I appreciate Ms. Bush and the flowers that you put on our tables tonight. They're beautiful. We need some beauty and some freshness. Also, to the District 1 PTA for greeting us tonight with a gift and a calendar with different faces where you can mark if you're happy or not. And just as we drove in, it's exciting to see how well everyone appreciates everything that we are doing in the district, and that all of us in leadership positions are working towards, and to Dr. Royster for staying the course and making sure that we are in compliance and we're doing everything that we need to be doing so we can, for the benefit of our children. At this time, I will turn this over to Dr. Royster, 4.01.
Thank you, Ms. Levinas-Wells. Good evening. You have a rather lengthy agenda tonight, so I do not have a formal superintendent's report, but I do have several introductions that I would like to make. First, two principals that were actually approved at the May special call meeting. First, we'd like to recognize Pat Paul, who is the newly appointed principal, Alexander Elementary. She is a very experienced school administrator, having served as a principal in 2 different districts in Spartanburg County. She, in fact, is already in the role at Alexander, working there each day, and we are certainly glad to welcome her to that leadership role and welcome her to Greenville County Schools. And you have someone with you if you'd like to introduce him as well. We appreciate you being here tonight as well. Congratulations. We also have to introduce another principal appointment that was approved at the May 11th special call meeting. Suzanne Schaus, who is the newly appointed principal at Stone Academy. I guess really just moving down the hall from service, distinguished service there as the assistant principal. And we're certainly pleased to welcome her into this leadership role and look forward to her continuing to move that school forward in a very positive direction. And you all may recognize that individual accompanying her tonight. When I talked with him out in the lobby, I asked him, did he want to give an update on the BEST program? We're talking about Henry, but you all may certainly recognize Coleman Schaus, who was one of the principals in Henry and sat up here a number of years ago. So we're certainly glad to have you with us tonight to recognize and celebrate Suzanne's appointment and her first appointment as a principal in Greenville County Schools. Congratulations.
I'd just like to say I'm excited that Suzanne's going to be at Stone Academy. Great leadership. I look forward to working with you, and thank you so much. Raised a good one.
Our third principal introduction, Daniel Green, Northwest Middle School. And very similar to Suzanne, is moving down the hall, so to speak. He has served with distinction as an assistant principal at Northwest, and we look forward to him continuing the excellent progress being made there, a little new direction in leadership. And as our previous introductee, also we're proud to say that he's a product of Greenville County Schools, finished high school here and started his career teaching here. Daniel, congratulations on your first appointment as a principal. We look forward to having you in that role, and I believe you have some folks with you if you'd like to introduce them.
It's an inspiration for me. High school.
Very good. Thank you for being here tonight. Congratulations again. Now we have several assistant principals that we'd like to introduce. First, Angela Abercrombie, assistant principal, Riverside High School. Angela, congratulations on your appointment. I believe you have someone with you that you want to introduce as well. Very nice to have you here tonight, and congratulations on your new appointment as assistant principal. Our next introduction, Kevin Duncan. Kevin is the newly appointed assistant principal, Northwood Middle School. Kevin, congratulations. We look forward to having you in that role. And I believe you have a guest with you as well.
Yes.
And welcome to you as well. Congratulations. Our next introduction, Brittany Jackson, assistant principal, Beck Academy. Brittany, congratulations on your appointment to assistant principalship. We look forward to having you in that role at Beck Academy. Congratulations. Our next introduction, newly appointed assistant principal, Travelers Rest High School, Lindsay Hubert. Lindsay, congratulations. We welcome you into that new role at Travelers Rest High School. And you have a guest with you as well? Very good. We appreciate you joining her tonight. Congratulations. Our next introduction, new assistant principal, Hughes Academy, Adrian Mays. Adrian, congratulations on your appointment. We look forward to having you in a leadership role at Hughes Academy. And I believe you have a guest with you as well. Would you like to introduce her?
I do this.
And welcome to you as well. Congratulations. The next introduction is new assistant principal, Beck Academy, James Reed. James, congratulations on your appointment to Beck Academy. We look forward to having you join Greenville County Schools, coming to us from Lawrence County, if I recall correctly. Congratulations. Welcome to the district and welcome to Beck Academy. Next introduction, Heather Sherman, assistant principal, elementary virtual program. Heather, congratulations. We look forward to having you in that leadership role, both real and virtually in that role. And I believe you have a guest with you. Would you like to introduce him as well? Well, welcome to you. Congratulations. In our last introduction, newly appointed assistant principal, Greenville High School, Nikki Templeton. Nikki, congratulations on your appointment assistant principal at Greenville High. We look forward to having you serve in that leadership role. Welcome to the board meeting and congratulations again. So then, as well as that concludes our introductions.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Royster. At this time, 5.01, request for CARES Act funding and redesignation of previous designated budget expenditures from elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund, ESSER 1 CARES, and ESSER 2 CRRSA CARESA, and to American Rescue Plan funds, ESSER 3 ARP. At this time, let's see, my apologies. Let me put this right here. There is we have a recommended motion coming from the committee of the whole. It needs no second to redesignate 32,600,000 of previous approved budgeted expenditures from ESSER 1 CARES to ESSER 2, so CRRSA to ESSER 3 ARP, and to designate 37,480,000 from ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 expenditures as detailed in the attached document. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the motion carries. There's a recommended motion from the committee of the whole of 5.02, addition of board policy ACB, educational equity, diversity, and inclusion, to approve the revision to board policy ACB. Are there, coming from the committee of the whole, it needs no second. Are there any questions? Yes, Ms. Wells.
I thought I was going to need to make a motion to strike a redundant sentence, but I guess now that I'm looking at it, the way we ended up, we kind of went back and forth and we defeated the motion and came back to the original. So I guess there isn't any problem. We don't have any redundant language in the policy that needs to be dealt with. Right? So,
Correct.
so I thought that I had to put that on the floor, but I guess that I don't have to put that on the floor.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the motion carries. 5.03, resumption of publicly attended board meetings. I recommend a motion from the committee of the whole to align our board meeting protocols to be consistent with that of the district, and the superintendent would work with the executive committee of the board for open meetings by August 2021. Any questions? Yes, Ms. Bush. All right.
I'd like to make a substitute motion, please.
All right, Ms. Bush.
Everyone should have received this at their place on the table tonight. And so I'm not going to read the entire Exhibit A, but the substitute motion is to amend by substitution to adopt the procedures contained in Exhibit A pertaining to public attendance at board meetings and public comment.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Suddeth? Any questions? Ms. Wells?
So I'm all for us getting back to kind of what we our way of doing business. I won't say normal or old way, but you know, our given way of doing business. But I guess I'm wanting to figure out, when we have an exhibit that it references a board policy is going to be in effect with additional parameters. How do we manage that? And so
how do we manage how long that will be in effect? It doesn't become part of the policy, and Mr. Webb, this might be a question for you. So this isn't going to become part of the policy, but it's parameters associated with it. It's not an administrative rule because it didn't come from the superintendent. So I'm trying to understand, should we just amend the policy to include these parameters versus kind of tacking something onto the policy that's only in board meeting minutes as an action? You know, like, how do we keep up with that? Because it's just an unusual way for us to make this transition.
Yeah, I mean, it is a little unique to reference a policy and add some additional parameters. And, you know, this is a unique time as we're coming off, hopefully improving and coming off the pandemic. But my interpretation of this would be that this would be in effect, if it were to pass, until such time that the board took contrary action or revised it or took a different action.
So the action that we took when we put the public comment piece in place was set with the sunset of, once the pandemic had passed, it was temporary procedure for as long as we had an emergency order from the governor. This exhibit would change that motion and would basically say it stays in place forever unless we take an action to change it. Okay, I'll see if somebody else has any questions or comments.
Any questions? Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell?
So the motion that we recommended from the committee of the whole was for this to start in August 2021. Why are we changing this to June 1st, 2021?
Yes.
I don't know who I'm asking.
So
we did August of 2021 because that's when we start back the school year. Why are we changing to June 1st?
At one time during that motion, it was stated in June, and then it was changed to August. But if we are doing graduations in June, then we need to just go ahead and be We just need to, and we had our event at the TD Center. We need to just go ahead and move forward as of June 1st. That's one reason.
But that's not what we recommended from the committee of the whole.
I know, and so that's why there's a substitute motion. Just start it in June.
Okay, the reason why we made the motion in the committee of the whole was to start the new school year off fresh. Why are we doing it this school year since we had it in there for it to start in the new school year?
This is a question for me.
I don't know who I'm asking the question to. I just want to understand why we're moving it from August to June.
I would,
when it's basically, I mean, we're going to be doing these things in August. Why are we moving it to June?
Okay,
We're off in July and the school year starts in August.
Okay. So I'm going to give others to speak. So I'm going to take this and then I'm going to ask someone else if they have a question, then I will address that. Okay. Ms. Mosley.
Okay, so this might just be a point of clarification. Sarah and I originally proposed a motion to return to, and I don't know what the right language is, standard board meetings for beginning in June. If I remember correctly, the day we made that proposal was the day, that afternoon is when the governor came out with his executive order, and 2 days later is when the CDC came out with their new guidelines, if I'm not mistaken. So I think, if I'm understanding correctly, since that meeting and since those things started to happen afterwards, I think the substitute motion is to suggest that since we now have changes in guidance and we now have orders, for mask optional, that kind of stuff, it makes sense that we go ahead and move forward with this, because technically speaking, we should be operating with the public's presence to some degree. I mean, correct? I mean, we've been sort of operating in a state of emergency that in theory no longer exists. So, I mean, am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that's my interpretation as well.
Okay.
It was said in that meeting when we were doing this motion at the committee of the whole, and I don't know how it ended up in August, but it was mentioned June. The governor had not given his statement, had not given.
But it was discussed for August. Yes, it was.
I know, but
everybody in here that was in here.
I agree. Exactly. And at that time, the governor had not come out with anything. It wasn't until after our meeting that night into the next morning that he came out and said, no more masks, no more this, no more that.
I thought that was just about the masks. That wasn't about the public meetings.
But
right?
It also said that we are having, everyone in the county is starting to have, even though it's social distancing, having public meetings where they limit the seating on a first come, first serve for meetings, whether it's city council. I'm sorry, did you say something?
I did. So what does this mean?
So this just means that,
explain to me what this means.
Basically, this
What's
means
the difference than what we recommended to now.
Okay, what it means is we're going to start at the committee of the whole. We will have a board meeting if approved, and there will be a certain amount of seats in this room. We will be sitting up at the dais. I say dais, you say dais. And we will conduct a meeting. It will be limited, like Dr. Royster said. Not all of the administration will be in here, but they will be on their computers watching unless they're presenting.
And I thought we discussed that everybody cannot be up on the dais.
Well,
even with 3 feet, everybody can't fit up on the dais.
Well, so look how close. Can you? Okay, this is how close I am to Roger. That's how close I'll be up to whoever's next to me.
We're 6 feet right now, right? We're supposed to be.
Well, I mean, look how close you are to Derek. Look how close I am to Lisa. It's big. Once Chris has moved further, all of those chairs will move a little. So I'm not seeing much of a difference with what we're doing now with Carolyn and Debbie and Pat sitting, whereas Pat would be there and they would be right. I mean, just look at where everybody's sitting right now. That substitute us into there. That's how it's that's the way it would be. They're not wearing masks.
Okay, but in this exhibit is saying that the people that come in here are going to be 6 feet social distance.
They'll be down here.
So we won't be up there on the dais.
We'll be up there. They will be down here.
I'm talking about what will we be?
We're going to be where Terry.
But we're not going to be three feet.
That's about 3 feet up there.
Not between those chairs.
Well, I'm going to take now.
Anyway.
Roger's moved over. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you, how far are you from Derek?
Well, the way that they set us, we're supposed to be 6 feet apart, right? This is how we've been the whole time.
We're not 6 feet apart.
That's what we're supposed to be.
Well, it's not.
But up there, it's no way.
It is no different from where,
But I'm just trying to understand what's the difference between.
Okay, my thing, this is my philosophy. It's time to move forward.
I'm all about moving forward, but I'm saying
and getting ready
between the recommended motion and this. Nobody has explained.
The timeline's the only recommended, that's the only difference. Instead of doing this in August, we're doing it in June.
Okay.
Okay.
I might have some more questions later.
Mr. Sailors.
Following up on Mrs. Goodwin Caldwell's question, I have no problem with going back up there. But what if one of us does? Now, I understand you're saying we're close here. We're also taking up more linear footage in this makeup than in that dais up there. You will not be 3 feet apart up there in that configuration. That's fine. That's fine. I'm not debating that. What if one of us or two of us choose not to sit up there because we're too close? What accommodations can be made for that?
I'd say that maybe we could move you down to the front and make you 6 feet. Okay. Can move you, you have a problem. We can, if anyone has a problem, we will accommodate that. If you don't feel comfortable sitting up on the dais, we will accommodate you on the floor. And if you would like to be 6 feet apart, we can put you where Dr. Royster is. You can have a chair there and we can have somebody else over here. Be real easy.
Doesn't seem easy.
Huh?
Does not seem easy. It's like separation, but that's okay. That's okay.
It would be like we give these students a choice to wear the mask or not wear the mask or whatever.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Mr. Meade.
Well, I hesitant to wade in here, but I will. If the 12 of us, the 13 of us are sitting up on the dais, and then if 3 of us, 2 of us comes down, sits in front, will that not take up less floor room? And how much space are you looking at under this new amendment for attendance for people attending the board meeting? And then how many staff are you going to have? What is that going to look like? Do you have any idea, not knowing what the motion is going to be?
Glad you qualified that. We would likely turn this back the way it was. This table up here, which is normally from here to Doug, but not including the 2 terms. And the people that we needed to absolutely be in here would sit here. And quite honestly, when we're not in here, we're going to be closer to get, because we know the vaccine status of each other. Nobody required us to tell that, but we know that. Our folks would be fine sitting here. We would put 6 feet apart, chairs out here for the public to come in. Our thinking on that would be might have people that want to come and talk, and they want to be 6 feet away from other people. So we'd set it up out here. We've not laid it out in here, but I would imagine 6 feet apart. If the staff's here and they're 6 feet back and they're 6 feet apart, 25, 30 people maybe fill.
Yes, so we normally set 100 chairs in here, so that'd probably be about.
So 25 to 30. And then if there were board members that felt like they needed to sit down here, we would, we'd work out some configuration, which would depend on the number of board members that felt like they needed to be 6 feet apart. But when your seats were set in here before you rolled around or whatever you did, they were top dead center 6 feet to top dead center 6 feet. That's how we do it. We don't do 6 feet from my right side to Dr. Turner's left side. We go top center to top center. And it is a little bit less than 3 feet. Somebody made that point already. When there are 13 people up there, it is inside of 3 feet. But we can accommodate either of those things. Only thing that we would suggest to you is that you maintain the same social distancing we do in our other facilities, at least at this point, for people coming in here from the outside. And not only to be consistent with what we do everywhere else, but also to provide some assurance to them that they would feel comfortable being in here speaking if they wish to do so.
Okay, my next question is, what does the policy that we are working under right now say? What is it? I don't remember the exact language of it, or I don't know what we're required to do and what we're not required to do. Anybody sum that up?
Doug can do it maybe word for word, but basically, as I understand it, was to make it controls the presence of individuals from the general public coming in. And it is limited to the general public coming in to speak at the board meeting itself. And at the committee of the whole, if you wish to speak, you submit your comments in writing online. And then there are also protocols that were listed in there. Doug, the protocols were being 6 feet apart in the room, and what else is in there?
Cleaning the microphone and some safety and public health protocols. So when you say policy, Mr. Meek, you're not referring to KCA. You're speaking of September 22nd, the last motion, correct? Right. Okay, just making sure that Dr. Royster's correct.
Okay. Did we not give the executive committee authority to make changes or to follow up or something? Did we do that in September?
No, sir. I believe the motion from the committee of the whole 2 weeks ago was for the board chair and the district, the board leadership team to work with the superintendent for protocols to go in effect in August. But back in September, I do not believe that was the case.
Okay. If the board votes to approve this Exhibit A, what does that change?
Well, it would do away with the parameters that were passed in September. It would go back to policy KCA with the additional qualifiers that are contained in on that exhibit.
I don't, maybe I'm just not seeing it, but I don't see in there where it tells us we're going back to sit up on the dais, does it?
It does not.
Who makes that decision?
You all would make that decision, but right now the reason you're not up there is because you can't maintain the 6 feet up there. So you pull that off and you go back up there.
So 6 feet is required by whom?
We have that protocol in place for our facilities, predominantly related to whether you're masked or unmasked, or you signed a permission or accepted responsibility to not be masked. Then we try to maintain 3 feet. For the general public, we want to maintain 6 feet.
Does DHEC or CDC require us to be 6 feet apart?
We recommend they don't require it.
One of the recommendations.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But for vaccinated individuals, they got a whole different set of recommendations. But, you know, we're prohibited from asking that.
Thank you.
Ms. Mosley. And then Mr. Lewis, did you have?
Okay, first question. I thought the guidelines were 3 feet. Where did that not change?
I thought they were 3 feet too.
It's 3 feet within the school for students, masked. That's
Okay,
CDC.
but we're not wearing masks, so
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first
I
part.
said, but we're not wearing masks, so are we?
Well, if you see somebody like one of us that's not wearing it, we've signed one of those same forms as other employees.
Yeah. Okay.
Indicating we're either vaccinated or we're accepting responsibility.
Okay. So maybe it's just me, and I was not privy to when all this started. So Sarah and I are sort of at a disadvantage when we proposed this originally. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't understand why we're making this so complicated. Secondly, I don't understand what the end game is here. At what point do we? I mean, the CDC said vaccinated folks don't have to wear a mask. We can't ask people who've been vaccinated. I mean, how long is this going to go on? I mean, that's where I am. That's why I guess I'm just trying to understand why we can't just say, go back to what we were doing with some reasonable precautions being taken. I mean, I don't have an issue with limiting maybe in here, but I don't know. I don't even know who I'm asking that question to, because I don't have the benefit of history when this started. And I know it was under the governor's orders and all that, but all of that's gone. There's not even any capacity restrictions anywhere in the state of South Carolina. So I'm really struggling to understand why we're making this so complicated.
So,
but that, again, I don't get in the weeds of the procedure. So
Just as a point of clarification, I would be remiss if I didn't say this, that there is, you're right, that the order regarding masks, a lot of things have changed in that order. There is still an order in place. It's just a lot different than it once looked. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that there is still an order, but you are correct.
I understand that, Doug, but my understanding, and granted, I'm getting my information from Columbia, is that a large part of the order that's still in place has to do with the National Guard. Okay, so let's be real and let's be honest.
I know if I speak on this, I have to pass my chairmanship to Ms. Wells, and I'm not going to do that. So, Mr. Lewis, because you didn't give it back to me before, so I'm not going to do it again. So, Mr. Lewis, that's why you got me over a barrel.
So I guess, I have a few questions for Ms. Bush since she made the motion, but I believe that you're not taking questions for Ms. Bush. So I have questions for Ms. Bush since she made the motion, but can I ask those questions directly to her and have her answer them?
No.
You can't.
Okay, so then I'll ask Mr. Webb then. So number 1 on Exhibit A says social distancing, and then in parentheses, it says 6 feet between individuals. So I interpret that to be the definition that this policy adopts is that social distancing is 6 feet between individuals. Is that how you would read that?
That's correct.
So then when number 3 says masks do not need to be worn as long as social distancing is maintained, then I would read that to say that we would be required to wear masks when we are not 6 feet from one another if we adopt this policy, which would be more restrictive than the current policies that we have in our schools.
That is correct. The exhibit reads, yes, sir.
So I guess I have reservations about adopting a policy that requires us to be more restrictive than our students are when we are, I think, trying to move to a process where we're trying to be less restrictive. So I have reservations about both those things. The other question, I just want to go back to the question that Mr. Meek asked, because I wanted to make sure I understood the answer. So the administration, as you look at this policy, you don't read this as directing you that the board is going to move back to the dais on June 1st, 2021. I mean, I can't even find where the board is even.
I mean, I guess I would read this as, I mean, this is with either here or there. This isn't a recommendation coming from the administration. Doesn't mean that we have an issue with it or that we wouldn't recommend it. But I guess if you read the whole number one, it could perhaps be more clear, but one could read it to mean that you're referencing the public attendance, that they must be 6 feet. It says with the exception of staff members present who are necessary for that meeting, which indicates going back to staff can be however close staff would be comfortable being. It does not, to your point, address the board members. So it's to me, it's just not addressed there. You're not the public attending, and you're not the staff. You all did away with whatever you're doing, and you decided to go back and sit up there, which by doing away with what you're doing would enable you to sit back up there. Absent a direction from the board to do differently, we would seat the public seating out here 6 feet apart. I don't know if that helps or not.
Absent the board directing you to do differently, where would we sit?
Absent you directing us not to do it, we would seat the general public out here 6 feet apart. And when those seats filled up, they couldn't come in. Just like now, if all the seats filled up, they can't come in. There are more seats, but that would be true in regular times.
Absent any additional direction, if this policy passes the way it is, you would move the board to the dais so that you could put the public out here. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, we'd need to do that, or otherwise you'd be sitting surrounding them.
Yep. So we know that those seats aren't 3 feet apart.
Yeah, they're short of 3. They're right around 2, a little more than 2.
I mean, as someone who sits in that chair and bumps the chairs of the people next to me, there's no way those chairs are 3 feet apart from each other.
No, they're not. And again, we go center to center. Okay. They are not 3 feet. We measured them. If you want 3 feet, only 10 people can sit up there. We did that way back just to see if people could sit up there.
It would appear to me then that the recommended motion from the committee of the whole provides more flexibility to the administration and the executive committee to adapt to situations on the ground than this one, which seems to be more restrictive than that policy. And so so on one hand, I'm encouraged that board members brought a motion to the board in writing and passed it out to everyone so that we could review a recommended change and discuss it and vote on it at the same meeting without needing 24 hours to review it in writing. So I think this is a huge step for our board. I'm a little confused though, because it appears to be more restrictive than the recommended motion that already came from the committee of the whole, which I thought was designed to give the executive committee and the administration the ability to make these changes rather than being more restrictive about them and then us having to come back at some time indefinitely in the future to change them. So I guess I just have some reservations about that, and I'd like to hear from the person who made the motion why this would be preferable to just allowing the executive committee and the board and the administration to make those changes.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Ms. Bush.
Thank you. It doesn't say anywhere in the motion where the board will see it. That's very obvious because I thought that after the sequence of events that took place after we had the committee of the whole and we decided on that motion, there were, as many of you have already said, there were very specific and changes made, not only by the governor, but by the CDC, and with our policies. So this was an attempt to be able to, since we saw several of our board members that wanted to try to return the normalcy of not where the board sits, because I don't think I heard any of them talk about where the board sits, but about our community being able to come in and speak to the board. And so this would just move us from August until June, which would be a committee of the whole meeting and a board meeting. And it might cut down on 5 people in the audience. But I thought if we pass this and we say we want people to be able, instead of waiting to August, to be able to come in June, that surely the district can work on the dynamics of putting 7 people up there and 6 people on the floor. And then I didn't think that was something that the board had to decide who, because I certainly wouldn't want 1 or 2 board members ever singled out and sat down on the floor. So I would think if we moved every other board member to sit, it's for 2 meetings. And then after that, the executive committee would be working with the superintendent to be able in August to get us even more back to normalcy. And so I just thought that this was a kind of a way to bring us to the middle, to those that didn't want to wait until August, that wanted to go back to having people be able to come and speak and be able to sit in the boardroom. And so that's why it doesn't say anything about where board members will see it. And I think that I had spoken to a couple of board members before the board meeting and said, how do you feel about this? And just to make sure it was not something that put people into an uncomfortable position, because, if it meant waiting 3 or 4 more months, I have respect for every board member in this room and the choices that they would make about how close they felt comfortable sitting next to somebody, or how, whether they were masked or not masked, or whether it was 6 feet or 3 feet. And I think the logistics could be worked out by this is mainly to get people that want to come to a board meeting back into the boardroom in June instead of August. So it's not a,
thank you.
It can pass or it can fail. I'm not turning this into a battle. It was just a way for me to bring people working together. So much for that.
Very nicely said. Thank you, Ms. Bush. Ms. Wells.
So I missed this part of the meeting because I had something else to attend to, but I appreciated Ms. Bush kind of laying out why she brought this, because the exhibit kind of puts some things in play that are, what do they mean? Do we wear masks? Do we not wear masks, et cetera? But if the intent is to allow the public access, as I recall, the board never decided to come sit on the floor. We came into the boardroom for a meeting, and this is how we were spaced, because the administration used the guidance that they had and laid out the boardroom in a way that we could effectively have a board meeting and adhere to the recommendations for social protocols at the time, social distancing protocols. So I would like to explore the idea that instead, if the intent is we want to get the public back in, as I believe to be the case, the only thing that's preventing or barring the public from being able to come and speak is the action that was taken on September 22nd that specifically laid out, if someone desires to speak, how they must do so. So we never took a motion prior to that to say the public can't come. It was the administration that closed the building down to the public because of the governor's order and then subsequent information. So am I tracking right so far, Doug, that There are no.
I believe that is.
Yeah, so there were no board actions to say the public can't come in, that we were coming to the floor, any of that. So I guess it seems simpler to me if we would move, and I'm not gonna put a motion on the floor yet. I'm gonna throw this out there. If we discontinue the revisions, or if we discontinue the temporary procedures for public input to board meetings, and that was what was passed on September 22nd of 2020, then that removes any board inflicted restrictions. And it doesn't remove the ability of the public to still submit public comment, because that was passed in May and would be in place as long as the governor's executive order is in place. But then it would allow for the superintendent to open the boardroom back up and remove those restrictions for public comment. So I'm gonna ask Mr. Webb. Mr. Webb, if I made a substitute motion to discontinue the temporary procedure for public input to board meetings, and we got a second and it passed, would that lift those restrictions in a way that the administration can then move forward with allowing the public to come in and speak and following whatever guidelines he can to get people back in this room?
And as you asked me, I'm reviewing the order, not the order, the motion that passed on September 22nd. So bear with me for
and I guess just for my colleagues who are also wondering about that. And we had the fact and impact statement was, in addition to the existing electronic submittal process, we propose to start offering the option for citizens to appear in person. The new process is. So
and I will go, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I agree that the motion was to approve as present the revision of the temporary alternative for public participation, which again talks about coming in and to speak at board meetings as passed by the board of trustees on May 12th. So what you would be doing is taking away this revision. So it would revert back to the May 12th, which again talks about the electronic format. So if you were to make, let's just say hypothetically, an amendment to the substitute motion that that keeps that in place, and I think it would be important to clarify and give directions to the superintendent about the procedures otherwise as well, as far as public attendance, because I do not believe, looking at the May 12th, that there was anything related to that. So if you go back to, for example, if you go back to policy KCA with the public comment procedures contained in the May 12th, that might be the best avenue to take.
yeah, and I'll have to look at that motion, but I guess we didn't give the superintendent direction when he shut the building down and when he put us on the floor. So my thought is, if we didn't take action and direct him to do that, then why can't, if we remove this temporary procedure, which kind of restricts how the public can interact with us, then why can't the administration?
Well, and yeah, give me one more second then to track the May motion. Okay. I think we've resolved the September. So let me review that. And by all means, you can keep talking while I review.
Well, and I guess, Madam Chairman, I'm trying to sort of simplify too and not put things in the way that then we have to come back and rescind and change later. If we can just remove the temporary procedure and get to what people are looking for, that I was just trying to simplify that. And so I guess, I don't know if there's
another person.
Okay.
Is it okay?
Well, if he's looking, yes, that'd be great.
Mr. Sailors.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some questions about next steps associated with whatever decision we make. And I don't even answer this one, but once we move back to having public in the room, are we going to eliminate the electronic submittal process? Because it was put in place to accommodate a lack of physical connection in the room. By doing so, does this also require the administration to open the building fully to the public, as it has been in the past pre-COVID? That's a question. And Doug, while you're reviewing, I've got a simple question for you. Why could we not just take the amendment or the motion that's on the board docs, remove August, insert June, and call it a day? Would that work?
That certainly is a possibility.
May.
I did.
Wait a minute. Go ahead, Mr. Witt.
Sure. So I reviewed the May 12th action item motion. And so if we revert back to that, remove the September 22nd, kept May 12th, then that would keep the public comment period, the electronic process, still in place.
So it sounds to me like then we have a couple options, but one of them would be to discontinue the temporary procedure for public input to board meetings. And by doing just that and making that motion, that would allow the superintendent to open the room up in a way that meets social distancing criteria to public input and still allow for public submission through an online process.
That's correct. If you were to remove the September 22nd parameters, revert back to policy KCA with the process intact as passed by May 12th for electronic comments, that is correct.
Okay. Then I'll hear some other discussion before I make a motion.
Mr. Meek.
Thank you. Mr. Webb, just a little question. The action that was taken in September was passed by the board?
Yes, sir.
So would that not take an action by the board to delete that action? And to do that, would someone not have to give the board advance warning, advance notice in writing? I believe that's our policy. Our Robert rules somewhere appears there.
So my view, Mr. Meek, and that's a very valid question, would be that this agenda item, as what has been discussed so far for his options, would arise from that agenda item, is closely enough connected to the agenda item, and you could take action to reverse the September 22nd parameters that were passed. So FOIA would still be complied with, board policy would still be complied with because of the agenda item that's on tonight's agenda.
Sounds good to me. Thank you.
Ms. Bush. So we have a couple of.
Sir, that my only concern was that we still had board members that were concerned about the distancing. And, but as we said, we've got to take some time to move back toward normalcy. And in the, with the things that changed since the committee of the whole, this is not a policy change. This is I guess the simplest thing would be like what Mr. Saylor's recommended, would just to put June in there. I think it would be very uncomfortable to put that decision on the superintendent. He made a decision in September to separate people because, we were in the middle of a pandemic that was kind of, nobody knew anything. And so we were put in the places where we are now out of the recommendations that he was getting. I think it would be very uncomfortable. That's why I didn't put it in this motion for the superintendent to make that decision on his own, where that we're going to come in here. That's why we had in the other motion that he would work with the executive committee, because I would assume that they would talk to board members and find out what they felt on, even when we go back, when we were looking at the August date. So, but I would find it that would not put him in a comfortable position to just say, you decide when we walk in this room and where we're going to see it. Because, the only thing this was supposed to do was to be able to move us up a little bit in our timeline and get people back in the room. And I assumed that, I tried to take the best from what everyone had concerns about when we talked at the committee of the whole, and still address the fact that things had changed just within a couple of days after the committee of the whole, and get something that would kind of be middle of the road for all the concerns that I heard about whether it be June or whether it be August that we got back together. So it would suit me fine to just say work on it for June, but I would not feel comfortable putting that back on the superintendent, that he would decide when we came back into the room and where we sat. That would give me great concern.
Okay, so we have several people who want to speak. So far, I've heard maybe look at changes to what has been said. We have someone that said change the date from August to June. That wouldn't change any difference. We have the maker of the motion whose intent was just to get people, the public, back involved and to establish and show that there is some normalcy within the district, that we're trying to move forward. All right, Ms. Wells, Ms. Wells, Mr. Lewis.
I just want to, I'm intrigued by Mr. Saylor's suggestion that we just changed August to June. I just would like to hear first from Mr. Webb, if that was if the recommended motion from the committee of the whole was adjusted from August to June, would that, it seems like that addresses the flexibility of making changes as things go on. It seems like it also then doesn't need an end date, because as the situations on the ground improve, then the decisions that we make in this room are going to change, and there wouldn't need to be an end date to that. It also seems like the recommended motion from the committee of the whole also allows for us to continue electronic submission if the executive committee and the administration choose to. It allows for things to continue that we want to continue. And it allows us to move in a way that makes the board comfortable, while also not requiring all 12 of us to have to vote on every change we make, because we have an executive committee and an administration that can do that. I mean, are you reading that? I mean, am I missing something in that recommended motion that is more restrictive or is going to somehow undo the work that we're working towards here?
No, I don't disagree with you, Mr. Lewis.
So I guess then for the administration, I mean, mean, I've heard this idea of not wanting to put this on you, but it sounds like it's the superintendent would work with the executive committee to do this. And I mean, I would interpret the executive committee to be representing the board's views on this. I mean, is just changing that from August to June give you the support that you would need to be able to make those decisions? Or do you feel like it needs to be more restrictive like I think Exhibit A is?
No, I think that gets you where you want to be in the most expedient manner possible. The only thing we don't want to do as the administration, we don't want to say to you, go back up there and sit 2 feet apart. You all need to decide that. Then the rest of this, we would handle like we would routinely set up the room. And I think that alleviates any concern about that.
It seems like with the recommended motion from the committee as a whole, gives the executive committee the ability to make those decisions. And as the executive committee changes, those decisions may also change. So I guess just for Mr. Webb, from a procedural question, so we had a motion and then we have a substitute motion. So in order to get back to this motion, we would need to vote down the substitute motion?
Yes, I believe it's been seconded, so there would need to be a vote on that.
And then we would need to bring up the original motion and amend that motion if we wanted to put June in there instead of August.
That's correct.
Okay. So,
all right. Okay. So is there not, Ms. Wells?
Well, there isn't. Since we haven't voted yet, I guess, Doug, in your estimation, your mic.
Sure.
Yeah. So, Doug, with the original motion, did the original motion have the effect of potentially allowing us to suspend that temporary procedure for public input to board meetings?
And I think that's the one question when Mr. Lewis asked me that question, that's one thing that popped up in my mind. I believe my view would be that this motion, because it deals with board meeting protocols, I think a reasonable interpretation of that would be that whatever those protocols would be, if public comment through electronic means were to continue, it needs to be stated in those protocols. Okay. So I do believe that there's a little ambiguity there, but because of the fairly broad nature of board meeting protocols, which would also arguably apply to public comment, basically, I believe the May motion could very well be no longer in effect. And so I think that needs to be clarified in the protocols.
Okay. So if we, to follow his logic, if we voted on this motion and then went back to the original motion, then we could amend it to change the date and to clarify, add on to that we would be suspending the temporary procedure for public input. Is that what
if that's the will of the
that
board,
would be
yes.
right. Okay. That would be the way to keep that, to clean that up.
Sure.
Okay.
The reason why I asked the question is because I think we did have this discussion at the CAL about the motion being, I want the public back in here. But when you're talking about bringing the public back in here, you still got logistics of where we are supposed to be. And it doesn't have anything in here about the board. So something in there about what's going to happen with the board and the seating and everything needs to be in here where the administration know about logistics, about where to put us.
Yes, ma'am.
If the public has got to be 6 feet distance, then what are we supposed to be?
Yes.
And it doesn't say that anywhere. I just need some clarification on it.
Yes, ma'am. So it's my understanding, according to the distance here, Dr. Royster made one I'm sure he has several ideas in his head, the best way to seat everyone so that the board members are socially distanced or whatever, whoever needs to be wherever. That first row, some board members could be down. As Ms. Bush stated, the maker of the motion, her intent was not to outcast any one board member, but maybe to alternate them up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. 6 on the floor, 6 up the top, and the rest of the room would be open to. So there are a lot of different scenarios, but no one knows this room better in setting it up than Mr. Davies and Dr. Royster and his team.
That's why I asked about the June 1st instead of the August, because when you're talking logistics, you have to give them time to do that.
Do you realize?
And June is in what, a week? The cow would be in 2 weeks. So
the cow would be in 3 weeks.
Okay, so if this Exhibit A is more restrictive.
Okay, just do away with Exhibit A. Well, just go ahead, Exhibit A.
If Exhibit A is more restrictive, is she going to take it off the floor? Are you going to take it off the floor?
You have to vote on it.
Oh, we have to vote on it. Okay. I still have some questions later. Okay. I'm good right now.
Okay. So let me just explain something. This staff can do amazing things because they put on 17 graduations last year in a matter of a month. So a room like this would not be terribly difficult for this. I understand, but they already know the layout.
You know what I'm saying?
I do. But they
can't do it in a clutch. We shouldn't be clutching them all the time for that.
My thing is, they've already done graduations. They pretty much know how to set. But anyway, let's move on. All right, Mr. Meek.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions on the original motion. If we were to go back to that, it says to align our board meeting protocols to be consistent with that of the district. Can somebody explain to me what that means? How are we going to be consistent? I mean, will the superintendent and the executive committee be limited to what protocols? Which ones are going to be consistent? What is somebody going to use? Any takers? No? Okay, secondly, in the original motion, it said that the executive committee of the board for open meetings by August of 2021. That's when it says by, does that mean the time between now and August? Any time between that? Could that be June 1st also? Without removing the August, would that be left up to if we left a motion like that, it would still be left up to the superintendent and the executive committee to reach a date?
The latest would be August the 1st. That is correct.
The latest would be August, but it'd be any time between tonight and August the 1st.
You are correct.
Okay, so I still would like somebody to address the protocols. How can that motion be consistent with some of the protocols that we have already out there that we're using? We just do away with those and not be consistent.
I think the protocols for everybody seated out here consistent with what we do out in the schools and in our facilities now. We have the luxury of knowing of the people that are sitting up here that we didn't ask because we're not supposed to ask. We know who's been vaccinated, so we don't have a problem being in proximity to one another. So that takes that out of the equation. People seated out here, we put the chairs 6 feet apart. So it doesn't matter whether they're vaccinated, not vaccinated, wear a mask, doesn't wear a mask, 6 feet apart. The question then comes back to, where are you all going to sit? If you all sit up there, you will not be 3 feet apart, you'll be 2 feet apart. It comes down to you because you all fall in that category that you're neither the general public nor are you an employee.
I may differ with that.
Or
I said I may differ with that, but that's okay.
our current legal opinion.
So the motion.
Except for purposes of pay. I saw Ms. Wells' face.
Was the amendment.
It's a
Substitute motion. Sounds right. Substitute motion. So if we go back to the original motion, it will be doing the same thing as the substitute motion? Is that any agreeable? No. No.
The substitute motion has this amendment in it, which would
make it a little more detailed, limited.
It would be more detailed.
More limited. More limited.
I would ask Mr. Webb.
But the original motion, if I understood correctly, we will work with the protocols because we're not classified like anybody else. So we could sit wherever we wanted to. And the others would be 6 feet apart, those that you decide to be 6 feet apart for the visitors. And then the superintendent and the executive committee could meet tomorrow, the next day or the next week, and come up with what would be for the committee of the whole would be effective, whatever date you all decide to do that. Am I understanding that correct? Okay. Is the substitute motion taken away from the main motion? Is it taking anything away from the main motion? Give me an expert opinion.
So there was the concern with in Exhibit A, number 3, that was communicated earlier about the mask. And the question would be, do they need to be worn? And again, it's the 6 feet as defined here in Exhibit A for social distancing. So number 3 is masks do not need to be worn so long as social distancing is maintained. So that was a concern that was raised earlier. And, that is something that the board needs to consider.
Would the board need to do that, or the superintendent and executive committee would make that decision?
Well, and let me clarify, Mr. Meek, the board and the executive committee with the substitute motion, that doesn't give it back to the executive committee and the superintendent. The original motion that's now on board docs from the committee of the whole gives it back to the executive committee and the superintendent. The substitute motion is more defined.
Okay, I think. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Ms. Bush, do you have anything to add? We're going to go ahead and vote on the substitute motion. Do you have anything?
Looking at the motion that was, looking at the motion that came from the committee of the whole, and it says, for the superintendent work with the executive committee of the board for open meetings by August 2021. That by August, I was just trying to move us up a little. That by August, I don't know if the executive committee can even get together with it if there's enough time to be able to make those. the third one about masks on the motion that's on the floor now, where it says masks do not need to be worn so long as social distancing is maintained. That was more of a choice that if you were sitting 6 foot or 10 foot or 15 foot or 3 foot or 1 foot, if you wanted to wear a mask, you could, but that you did not have to as long as the social distancing was maintained. So as complicated as this has gotten, my simple request was just to meet in the middle. And if we want to vote this down and start all over from scratch, or assume that we can have the executive committee and the superintendent, but it was just a show of good faith to try to get the public back. It would have been nice tonight that the District 1 PTA would not have had to stand at the corner of the property out there to welcome us back, that we could have looked out in the audience and seen smiling faces. But I understand the difficulty. This is the making sausage part. And for the new board members, welcome to making sausage. It is never a pretty thing. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bush. Mr. Sailors.
I have a question, council. Doug, if the substitute motion fails, and we go back to the original motion, because the original motion is worded, board meetings, August of 2021. August 2021 is legal definition is the deadline, am I correct?
That is correct.
So if the administration realized the consensus of this discussion as being by August of 2021, we could implement June of 2021. Motion wouldn't even need to be changed, would it?
It would not.
Okay, we have a substitute, Ms. Wells.
The motion wouldn't need to be changed for us to make changes, but would we still need to suspend the temporary procedures that were adopted, that we took board action to put in place? So I'm thinking if we go back to the original motion, do we still need to offer an amendment to suspend those temporary procedures?
So no, the September 22nd procedures, in my opinion, would be removed as a result of this motion.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay.
Can I ask for clarification?
Yes, sir.
So if we go back to the original motion, it's approved and everything resets. If we agree by consensus to this conversation that we're sitting at the dais starting June the 1st or June Cal meeting, if a member of the board does not feel comfortable with that, Dr. Oyster, could they reach out to you and ask to be reseated somewhere else, all on their own?
Yes.
That would be their decision.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. We have a substitute motion on the floor. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the substitute motion, please raise your right hand. Agree with the substitute motion? You agree with the substitute motion to keep that in place? You agree to keep it? The substitute motion says that we will keep everything on this. That's the substitute motion.
Yes.
From the very beginning tonight. Okay. All those in favor of the substitute motion, raise your right hand. Okay. Oh. Okay. All those opposed, raise your right hand. Okay. The motion fails. All those
We'll go back to the original motion.
Yeah. Now we will vote on the original motion. Yes.
If we go back in June or by August with protocols that are consistent with the district, at what point can we just go back to normal?
I cannot answer that question. Dr. Royster. Would you like to address that?
I can't answer that question at this point. I don't know at what point do we have to completely stop doing anything preventative. I can't answer that right now. We do less and less as the advice indicates we should do less and less.
Well, is this going to require another motion to go back to normal at some point in the future and require more hours of our time to discuss it?
Ms. Doolin, I would say most likely, but with the motion on the table now, the original motion by Ms. Bush to the original motion to align our board meetings protocol to be consistent with that of the district and would work with the executive committee of the board for open meetings by August 2021, which means this could happen in June. Okay, all right. Okay, so that's the motion on the floor. Any questions? All those in favor, please address by raising your right hand. All opposed? All right, Mr. Soda. The motion carries, and we will move on now. We will be working with Dr. Royster, and I'll call a meeting as soon as possible to move forward on that. 5.04, naming Gymnasium of Rudolph G. Gordon School. There's a recommended motion from the committee of the whole. It needs no second to approve the naming of the gymnasium at Rudolph G. Gordon School for Jackie Parker. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the motion carries. 5.05, naming the atrium at Blythe Academy. Recommended motion from the committee of the whole needs no second to approve the naming of the atrium at Blythe Academy for Dr. Sandra Griffin. Any questions? Any comments? All in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Action item 5.06, naming of front entrance at Roper Mountain Science Center.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion coming from the administration to approve the naming of the front entrance to the Roper Mountain Science Center Environmental Science and Sustainability Center for Dr. Jeff and Mary Lawson.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Doolin. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
And the motion carries. 5.07, naming the deck at Roper Mountain Science Center, Environmental Science and Sustainability Center. Recommended motion from the committee of the whole needs no second to approve the naming of the deck at Roper Mountain Science Center, Environmental Science and Sustainability Center for Drs. Linda and Tom Hamilton. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the motion carries. 5.08, naming of Chestnut Oak Staircase at Roper Mountain Science Center, Environmental Science and Sustainability Center. Recommended motion from the committee of the whole needs no second to approve the naming of the Chestnut Oak Staircase at Roper Mountain Science Center, Environmental Science and Sustainability Center for Tommy and Ron Reese. All in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the motion carries. 5.09, naming of downstairs classroom at Roper Mountain Science Center, Environmental Science and Sustainability Center. Coming from the Committee of the Whole, this needs no second to approve the naming of the downstairs classroom, Roper Mountain Science Center, Environmental Science and Sustainability Center for Dr. Bill and Jean Smith. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the motion carries. 5.10, J.E. Serene Scholarship Award recipients, new and renewal. Recommended motion from the administration to approve the new and renewal scholars for Serene scholarships in the amount specified by the Serene Scholarship Program Report.
Chairman,
Yes, Ms. Wells.
I move to approve the new and renewal scholars for Serene scholarships in the amount specified by the Serene Scholarship Program Report.
Second, who? I'll entertain a second.
I'll second.
Mr. Sailors, made by Ms. Wells. Any questions? All in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the motion carries. Architects, 5.11, architect selection for new elementary school, former J.L. Mann High School site. Recommend a motion from the Committee of the Whole to approve the negotiations to converse with the top-ranked firms and, upon conclusion of successful negotiations, accept the applicable highest-ranked firm as the designator of record for proposed new elementary school. It needs no second. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the motion carries. 5.12, Duke Power Utility Easement at A.J. Wittenberg. Recommend a motion from the Committee of the Whole. Needs no second to approve the utility easement requested by Duke Energy Carolines LLC at A.J. Wittenberg Elementary. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. 5.13, Greer Commission of Public Works Sanitary Sewer Easement at Greer Middle School and Greer High School. Recommend a motion from the Committee of the Whole. Needs no second to convey the sewer system contained within the easements as described in the 4 easements to the Greer Commission of Public Works. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the motion carries. 5.14, approval of annexation of Rudolph G. Gordon School in the city of Fountain Inn. The recommended motion from the Committee of the Whole needs no second to approve the forms giving permission for the annexation of Rudolph G. Gordon School into the city of Fountain Inn. All in favor, please address by saying, any questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the motion carries. 5.15, property quit claim at Summit Drive Elementary to the city of Greenville. If you will refresh your computers, and I will read how the refresh, if you do, this is the recommended motion. Recommended motion from the administration to approve the quit claim deed of 0.1025 acres of district property to the city of Greenville for construction of a mini roundabout and to approve the temporary construction easement for this project as presented. I will need a maker of this motion.
Madam Chairman, I move for the motion to be approved as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Sailors. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Lewis. Any discussion? Mr. Sutter.
Is it 0.1.37 or 0.1.35?
It's 0.1, it's 1025.
On mine it says.
I know if you refresh your computer, there was a misprint and it's 0.1025. And also deed of 0.1025. Okay. Ms. Wells?
Is this the roundabout work they're going to do? Is it going to include any sort of signalization for the pedestrian crosswalk piece?
Dr. Worcester or Colonel?
Colonel Carl.
No, ma'am, not that I'm aware of.
We can submit that request for signalization though,
For some lights or
or caution
some kind of
lights,
something
which would
there?
be ordinary in a school zone with a crosswalk anyway.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the motion carries. 5.16 Amendment of Malden Centerpoint Intergovernmental Agreement. The recommended motion from the administration, and I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the amendment to the Centerpoint Multi-County Industrial Park Agreement as contained in Exhibit A.
Your second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Suddeth, made by Mr. Sailors. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the motion carries. 6.01, election of audit team committee, and I will ask Mr. Lewis if you could give us the update.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. At the May 11th Committee of the Whole meeting, we asked for board members to nominate themselves to serve the 5 spots on the audit committee. And the 5 board members that nominated themselves were Ms. Leventis Wells, Ms. Goodwin Caldwell, Mr. Sailors, Ms. Morrison Fair, and Mr. Meek. And that would be 5 nominees for 5 positions. And so I would recommend that we would accept those unanimously.
Okay, a recommended motion for Mr. Lewis is that we accept the 5 for the audit committee. And without objection, we will go ahead and accept these 5. And I'm sorry. I will need. Okay, well, there's a recommended motion from Mr. Lewis. So all in favor, please address by saying aye.
Second the motion.
Yes, second.
Mr. Meek, second.
Okay.
So all in favor, please address by saying aye.
It's got on mine done for information only. So who made the motion second to do what?
The recommended motion came from Mr. Lewis since he was over the committee and he read the 5. There were 5 slots and he recommended to accept those 5. And so there was a motion and a second to accept the 5.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Congratulations to that committee. 8.01, there is no recommended motion, information only. Are there any questions for Dr. Royster and for Robin? Did I skip one? Okay, my apologies. Committee reports. Are there any committee reports?
Madam Chairman, I've got 2, if I could, please.
Yes, Mr. Saylor.
From an advocacy standpoint, each of you should have received an update that Ms. Horton put together for our information of legislation that has already been enacted from this last session. She's currently working on the pieces of legislation that are carried over to next year, which are dramatically more lengthy than what we've already received. As soon as she completes that information, we'll review it and get it to you. The Ways and Means K-12 subcommittee did meet today. The expectation was going to be a little more dramatic, and it did not bear any fruit. The only thing they did was receive 3 reports and adjourned inside of 40 minutes. So nothing dramatic happened there. As far as the Roper Mountain policy subcommittee or ad hoc committee that's been appointed, we met earlier today and have got some information we're working on for your information. Also, there will be a Roper Mountain presentation at the Committee of the Whole in June on the association and the Science Center operations itself, kind of giving us a history and how they actually operate each and every day. And our goal is, as a committee, to have a document to the board for consideration on these naming policies moving forward for August Cal. And that's it, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sailors, and for your reports, and also Mr. Lewis.
I just have a question for Mr. Sailors.
Yes.
Mr. Sailors, I appreciated the summary that you sent out of the bills that passed and were signed. One of them was House Bill 3589, which is the Schools of Choice bill that was signed into law by the governor. I know we haven't had a lot of discussion about that bill because there was a lot of questions about whether it was going to move forward or not. But it appears that it provides opportunity for local school districts to identify schools that perhaps could opt out of state or local statutes or legislation. And I was wondering if either the advocacy committee or the committee of the whole, we could just have a more thorough discussion about that bill and maybe what opportunities that might present to us to allow some of our schools to start that process.
Julie and I have talked about that, and I think it would be more appropriate to have that conversation at a committee of the whole so the entire board can be a participant in the conversation. So we'll work that and get it on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Sales.
Thank you.
Any others? Hearing none. Okay. 8.01 monthly finance report. This is information only. I'll turn it over to Dr. Royster, and then Robin, stay tuned.
We'll be glad to answer any question you might have.
Does anyone have any questions? Ms. Mosley.
Quickly, I have two questions, but they're related. What is our, and I'm looking, obviously a lot of spreadsheets here. What is our unassigned fund balance right now? And I'm asking you, Robin, because I assumed he'd ask you, or do you know? Yeah.
Sure.
You asked again, I didn't.
What is our unassigned fund balance?
The unassigned fund balance is $257,345,816.
800 what? Sorry.
16.
Thank you. Okay. And so there's been some discussion of funding mental health services with non-recurring funds. However, I know there's been a lot of discussion. So is there going to be an upcoming recommendation from the administration to use fund balance or other funds to provide additional mental health services? Because I know that's...
We've agreed to fund some additional services through federal Title IV funds. We've also asked for a meeting with state mental health and local mental health so that we can better understand who they're not serving. We have asked them for some data, and they apparently do not have within their system the ability to track that. And so we're going to meet with them about the utilization of one of our systems to track that information. That would be something we would likely come back to you with in the fall.
And so you're saying they're going to use our system to track maybe who they're not serving. Is that what you're saying?
They obviously very well track who they serve. Their system does not track who they don't serve. Now, I can't tell you all the details of that because we haven't had that meeting yet.
Right.
That's my understanding based on some of the inquiries we made of them.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr. Suddeth?
Mrs. Stack, we have on our investments, we've got what we budgeted, and what we received is much less than what we budgeted. Is that going to cause any kind of problem?
When we don't receive revenue that we would normally receive, we have to, compensate out of other revenue funds to cover anything that would have been paid with that interest. But I suppose you're talking about general fund.
Will we receive a copy of that, where it comes from, whether the funds we're taking it from?
So the interest revenue goes into the larger pot of general fund revenue.
And we don't specifically assign expenditures to a certain revenue source.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I move we adjourn.
All those in favor, please impress by saying aye.